You are listening to Exopolitics Today with Dr. Michael Salla, your source for the uncensored truth regarding the human, extraterrestrial, social, global, and political agenda. Click the like button and subscribe to this channel. Visit exopolitics.org and sign up to receive our email notifications, news, and information. Be informed and be aware with Exopolitics Today. And now, here's Dr. Michael Salla.
Was a summary of the classified version of the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena report just leaked. On Wednesday, June 30, Richard Dolan did a podcast, and in the podcast, he released a document that was emailed to him by a trusted source concerning the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena report that was delivered to Congress. Now, this summary or this document actually summarized what it was that was in the classified version of the June 25 report that different committees in the US Congress got, in particular the US Senate Intelligence Committee, the Defense Committee in the Senate. The classified version went into some of the advanced US technologies that are being studied in remote facilities such as Area 51. And the thrust of this document was that essentially there are a number of advanced technologies being developed by the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, concerning anti-gravity, antimatter, and other advanced propulsion systems. And these were all being flight tested over at Area 51. None of the UFOs that were sighted by the Navy in 2004 and 2015 and that were the subject of this report delivered to the Senate actually are US in origin. And so that leaked document presumably tells us what it is that the US has been developing but is not yet deployed in the theatre or not being deployed overseas other than just being tested around the Area 51 facility. So this is what the document is stating. Now, is it true? Now, according to Richard Dolan, he says that there's no evidence that such craft have been actually deployed and used in operations. So this is something that he believes there's no documentation confirming this. And he's absolutely correct. There is no public documentation confirming this. But what we do have is a lot of insiders, a lot of whistleblowers who have been talking about working on classified programs where these types of craft were being developed and then deployed in operations. We have a number of insiders who have worked in classified programs with very strong credentials backing up their testimony, saying that they were involved in the development of such craft that were later deployed. We have, for example, the testimony of Mark McCandlish, who says that in 1988, his close associate, Brad Sorensen, traveled to Edwards Air Force Base and saw 3 flying saucer craft that were on display for different customers to purchase them and deploy them in the field. These were not experimental craft being tested at Area 51. We have the testimony of people such as Edgar Fouché, who said that around the same time in 1989, TR-3B craft were being flown out of Area 51, the S4 facility in particular, and that they were being deployed in the field. With Edgar Fouché, he was someone that did work at Nellis Air Force Base and he has supplied documentation. We have other insiders such as William Tompkins, who said that he worked at a number of leading aerospace companies such as Douglas Aircraft Company, TRW, Northrop Grumman, General Dynamics, throughout his career from the 1950s up until the early 1980s. He worked on various craft designs for different companies, and that they were fulfilling contracts to the US Navy. So these were being built. And then, of course, we have people who say that they were part of secret space programs. The year 2000, Michael Ralph was the first one to come forward to say that he was served on a 20 and back program. He was followed in 2014 by Randy Kramer, who said that he served on a 20 and back program. Later in 2014 and early 2015, we have Corey Good, who says that he served on a 20 and back program. And ever since, there have been a wide number of people who have come forward and said that they served on these 20 and back programs. Some of these people that I've interviewed, such as Michael Gerloff, have excellent credentials. He was someone that had worked for the US Marine Corps and the US Army. So there have been a number of very credible people who have come forward, say that they have been working for a 20 and back program, that they were part of these secret space programs, where these craft that were being tested at places like Area 51 at the S4 facility were later deployed. And I think this is a common problem we have from UFO researchers, and it's not just Richard Dolan, it's many others in the kind of mainstream of ufology who just rely on documents and overlook the fact that eyewitness testimony is evidence. It's admissible in a court of law. And of course, eyewitness testimony can be used to convict someone of a crime. It can be used to award damages in a case. It can be used for fact-finding. So why is it that a lot of UFO researchers go through this process of saying, well, there's no evidence that flying saucers have been deployed by the US military, and that what we are witnessing now with these UAP reports could in fact be reverse engineered extraterrestrial spacecraft? I think that there is clearly a bias here against insider and whistleblower testimony. And I think it's fine for people to focus on documents, things that can be retrieved through FOIA, through Freedom of Information Act. I think that's a really good way of introducing this vast field of UFOs, exopolitics, to people who now are suddenly paying attention to this. And that's probably a very sensible way of doing it, being able to supply documentation. But, one should not fall into the trap of assuming that, that's the only evidence in town. And that's unfortunately a bias that many conventional veteran UFO researchers, such as Dolan and so forth, fall into, that there is a lot of evidence. Sure, it's testimonial evidence. Sure, a lot of these whistleblowers can't directly support their claims with documentation, but that's not up to a whistleblower. I mean, you don't ask an eyewitness in a murder trial to say, well, prove to me that you were there and saw what you claim to have seen. An eyewitness might not be able to prove that they were there and saw what they claim to have seen. Their eyewitness testimony is sufficient for it to be admissible in a court of law, and it's up to the prosecution to provide evidence saying that, well, this eyewitness wasn't there, to discredit them and to dismiss that eyewitness testimony. So that should be the process. So with this leaked document that Richard Dolan put out there, is it genuine? Could be. It talks about DARPA being in charge of these various propulsion systems that are being studied. I'll just read out the 8 that presumably are being studied. These were energy pulse propulsion systems, ion propulsion systems, anti-gravity propulsion systems, antimatter propulsion systems, ramjet, hydrogen propulsion systems, compressed nuclear propulsion systems. With that compressed nuclear propulsion system, it's very interesting given what over the last year has been the patents that were applied for on behalf of the US Navy by a scientist, Dr. Salvador Pais, who came up with a compressed nuclear fusion reactor that could provide up to 1 terawatt of power, and that this was something that was fully portable. So I think this is a very viable propulsion system that is being developed by the Navy. And certainly I think that this is something that backs the testimony of people such as William Tompkins saying that the Navy built some very large spacecraft that were deployed in the late 70s and 80s, and that these used very powerful propulsion systems, and something like this compressed nuclear propulsion system would be exactly what was deployed by the Navy in the 1970s and 80s, and which is now being released in the form of this patent application by Salvador Payas. This is the way in which the US Navy can bring from the classified world into the open source literature technologies that have been developed and deployed many decades ago. The seventh item in this list that Dolan provided is the advanced use of exotic elements for energy research, and then it has parentheses, ET related items. So this is a really very intriguing reference. For those of us in the UFO field, in the exopolitics fields, immediately we recognize this as ET reverse engineered technologies that are being studied for advanced propulsion systems. And certainly I believe, based on these eyewitness testimonies, that this happened many decades ago, that the first reverse engineering programs began as far back as the 1940s. And certainly there are documents, leaked documents, that support that. These are the majestic documents that have been leaked and made available, and talk about efforts to reverse engineer, or certainly to study the technologies that were retrieved from flying saucer crashes and to build some of these. And certainly there are credible people that were involved in this scientific effort, such as Dr. Theodore von Karman, who headed the scientific advisory board for the US Air Force from 1946 up until he retired from that around 1953. So these reverse engineering efforts have been going on for a long time. They were deployed in the 1970s and 80s, and they've been flying around ever since. Now, of course, this is something that the UAP report that came out on June 25 doesn't want to acknowledge. It wants to bury that. And so this is where we have this classified and unclassified version of the UAP report being very critical here. The unclassified version said these technologies that were spotted in 140 cases that were seen by pilots, that recorded by advanced telemetry, radar and other tracking devices by the US Navy, that these clearly did not belong to the US military, any branch of the US military. And certainly this leaked document that Richard Dolan made public on June 30, that supports that particular narrative. It's saying that these are technologies being studied, but none of them have been deployed in the field. Quote, prototype of flying craft utilizing the above technology are being flown at Area 51 and Tonopah Air Force Base Test Range. Some of the UAPs observed around Nevada can be contributed to the above craft. However, none of the experimental crafts have flown outside the Nellis Test and Training Range. None of these experimental crafts can be attributed to the sightings photographed by the US Navy. So this document is really saying that nothing that has been released or studied in the UAP report pertains to anything that is being developed at Area 51. I know that's nonsense based on eyewitness testimony, and it would be good if mainstream UFO researchers start to accept the testimony of many dozens and even hundreds of eyewitnesses and whistleblowers that say that they were part of the R&D for the development and the deployment of these craft, or certainly those that claim to have been part of secret space programs where these craft have been deployed. But nevertheless, this is a very interesting development. Whether this document that Dolan released is a genuine one, I think there's going to be a lot of debate over it. Certainly there are elements in it that do suggest maybe this could be disinformation. I think it is disinformation. I think it's part of an official narrative to really get people to accept the idea that the US has not developed such technologies that have been deployed in various military theaters around the world. I think they have been deployed. So this document is really trying to, I think, support a false narrative. Now, whether the document itself is disinformation to support a false narrative, very interesting. I think Dolan plans to do a follow-up where he talks about this document and whether or not he thinks it's genuine or not. But I certainly think that the document is trying to prop up or support a false narrative. I'll provide links for you to be able to read the document online or to listen to Dolan's podcast where he talks about this document. This has been Dr. Michael Sala with Exopolitics Today. Don't forget to subscribe to my podcast. Thank you and aloha.